You know that saying, blood is thicker than water? Well, in my case, it might as well be, blood is the only thing that matters, and you, my dear Evan, are just lucky we let you stay. I was adopted when I was 5 years old. The John and Catherine household took me in, fed me, clothed me, and reminded me every damn day that they had saved me. Not that I was some orphan begging on the streets, but to hear them tell it, you'd think they pulled me out of a Dickensian nightmare. And while I was supposed to be forever grateful, their biological son, Freddie, was showered with unconditional love. Freddie, my younger brother, 5 years my junior, but in every way the golden child. Charismatic, funny, effortlessly charming. You know the type, the kind of guy who could crash your car into a lake and somehow convince you it was your fault for parking it too close to the water. He had that magical ability to make people love him, which meant he could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. If Freddie failed a test, the teacher was unfair. If I got a B+, Evan, we expected more from you, considering everything we've done for you. So yeah, the family dynamic was fun, but life wasn't all bad. I had one thing that kept me sane, Lassie. Lassie and I had been together for 3 years, and if you asked me back then, I would have told you she was the one. She was attractive, enigmatic, and a little unpredictable. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had someone in my corner. Well, almost. Because there was one person who absolutely despised me. Her mother, Margaret. Or as I like to call her in my head, the queen of passive-aggressive disapproval. From day one, she looked at me like I was some stray dog her daughter had decided to take in. I could almost see the calculations behind her cold, judgmental eyes. Where did this boy come from? What kind of genes does he have? She never outright said it, at first, but I knew she thought Lassie could do better. And then one night, after a couple of glasses of wine, she did say it. It was at a family dinner. I was helping clear the table when I overheard her talking to Lassie's father. "It's not that I don't like Evan," she said in the tone of someone who definitely didn't like Evan. "I just worry, you know. We don't know his family history. His real parents could have been alcoholics. Or worse. Mental illness runs in families, you know." I remember gripping the plate so hard I almost snapped it in two. Lassie's father was a reserved man. He worked as a trucker and was rarely at home. His tired face said only one thing: "Don't touch me or I'll break." So Lassie's father mumbled something non-committal, clearly not interested in the conversation. But that was the night I learned the truth. Margaret didn't just dislike me. She feared what I might be. So yeah, family and love. Let's just say, my life was a never-ending game of prove your worth, and I had no idea that the worst was yet to come. You know how in movies, the main character always misses the obvious signs? Like when the music gets all ominous, the camera zooms in, and the audience is practically screaming at the screen, "Don't go in there, you idiot!" Yeah, that was me. Despite all the baggage that came with my family, I still believed that love would conquer all. That Lassie and I were different. That we would beat the odds and prove to everyone, her mother, my parents, the universe itself, that we were meant to be. In hindsight, I was a damn fool. Because looking back, the red flags were everywhere. It started small. Lassie had always been friendly. She was the type of person who could make anyone feel at ease. But with Freddie, it was different. She laughed a little too easily at his jokes, even the stupid ones. And trust me, they were stupid. Freddie could say something as dumb as, "Why don't skeletons fight each other? Because they don't have the guts." And she would be howling like it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. Meanwhile, I could crack an actually decent joke, and I'd get a polite chuckle. Then there were the looks. Little glances that lasted a second too long. A flicker of something in her eyes that I couldn't quite name but didn't like. I told myself I was imagining things. That I was being paranoid. Freddie was just being Freddie. Charming, playful, magnetic. Lassie was just being Lassie. Warm, sociable. I was reading too much into it, right? Then came the night that should have been nothing but a fun, normal family dinner. We were all sitting around the table. Me, Lassie, Freddie, my parents. The usual chaos of conversations overlapping, My mom nagging my dad about his salt intake, Freddie telling some exaggerated story about his latest gym adventure. And Lassie? Lassie was enthralled. She was laughing, like full-on, tears in her eyes laughing, at every little thing Freddie said. Now, I'm not a jealous guy. At least, I didn't think I was. But something about the way she was looking at him, the way her hand casually brushed against his arm when she reached for her glass, made my stomach twist. Then Freddie, always the comedian, leaned back in his chair and smirked at me. Man, Evan, if you hadn't met Lassie first, maybe I would have taken my shot. Everyone laughed. I forced a chuckle too, because what else was I supposed to do? Call him out? Make it weird? No, I did what I always did. I let it go. But that uneasy feeling didn't go away. And then there was the phone. Lassie had never been the type to be glued to her screen. But lately, it was always in her hand. And she was texting. A lot. At first, I didn't think much of it. But then came the phone calls. I'll be right back, she'd say, stepping into another room. Just my mom, she'd shrug when I asked who it was. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. All I knew was, for the first time in our relationship, I started to feel like I was losing her, and I didn't even know why. I always thought that when the time came to propose, it would be my decision, a grand moment of romance, planned out in my head, driven by nothing but love and certainty. But instead, I got Thanksgiving at the Inquisition's house. It started like any other Thanksgiving at my parents' place. Lots of food, forced family bonding, and the ever-present reminder that Freddie was the golden boy. This year, however, we had special guests, Lassie and her mother Margaret. Margaret, who usually barely acknowledged my existence, suddenly decided that this year was the perfect time to start talking to me. And not just any talk, the talk. 3 years is a long time, Evan, she said, swirling her wine like a villain in a soap opera. Don't you think it's time you made things official? I nearly choked on my mashed potatoes. Now I get it. Most guys are terrified of commitment. That wasn't me. I wanted to marry Lassie. I loved her. But the way Margaret was saying it, it wasn't a suggestion. It was a mandate. I looked at Lassie, expecting her to laugh it off, to roll her eyes and tell her mother to chill. But instead, she just gave me a small, careful smile. Mom, don't pressure him, she said. But it was the kind of don't pressure him that really meant, yeah, Evan, what's taking so long? Something about it felt off, like I was being herded toward a decision rather than making it myself. Still, I let it go. Maybe it was just normal mother-in-law stuff. Maybe Lassie was just being polite. Maybe I was overthinking everything. So I did what any rational man in love would do. I bought a damn ring. A week later, after careful planning and a ridiculous amount of stress, I proposed. It was a perfect moment, under the stars, with candles, a scenic lake view, the whole Hollywood treatment. Lassie cried, said yes. We kissed. It was beautiful. I should have felt ecstatic, but there was this nagging little voice in the back of my head whispering, why did it feel like you were following a script? Still, I ignored it. Because I loved Lassie, and love conquers all, right? Fast forward to the big engagement party. My parents, her mother, our friends, everyone was there. Champagne, music, congratulations all around. And then I saw Freddie. Freddie, who was usually the life of the party, looked off. Not jealous, not happy, just off. His usual cocky grin was gone. Instead, he looked almost lost, like a guy who'd just been punched in the gut but was trying to play it cool. At one point, our eyes met, and I swear, for a split second, I saw something close to fear flash across his face. But before I could process it, he slapped on his usual Freddie smirk and toasted to us. Weird, right? But that wasn't even the strangest part. The strangest part was Margaret. The second Lassie said, yes? Margaret exhaled like someone who had just finished holding their breath for years. It wasn't just relief. It was something else. Like she had just won a long, exhausting battle, and I couldn't, for the life of me, figure out why. After the engagement, Lassie changed. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious. Just little things. She seemed distant, more distracted. There were moments where she was right next to me, but I felt like I was talking to someone 1,000 miles away. She was always checking her phone, always stepping away to make calls. When I asked if everything was okay, she'd just smile and say, "Just wedding stress, babe." Maybe she was right. Maybe I was imagining things. And maybe it was just a coincidence that she and Freddie kept exchanging glances. Because surely there was no reason for me to worry. Moving in together was supposed to be a fresh start, a new chapter, a home filled with love, laughter, and all that happily ever after nonsense people write about in greeting cards. Instead, it started with vomiting. Not exactly the romantic housewarming I had in mind. It happened 3 days after we moved in. Lassie had been acting off, pale, tired, running to the bathroom at random times. At first I thought it was just stress. Moving, wedding planning, it made sense. But then one morning, as I was making coffee, she walked into the kitchen looking like a ghost, gripping the counter for support. "Lass, you okay?" I asked. She hesitated, her eyes darting around the room like she was trying to find an escape. Then, finally, she took a deep breath and said the words that should have been the happiest moment of my life. "I'm pregnant." For a second I just stood there waiting for my brain to catch up. Pregnant. Holy shit. I should have felt pure, undiluted joy. And on the surface I did. I hugged her, kissed her, told her how happy I was. But somewhere, in the deepest part of me, something didn't feel right. It wasn't the news itself. I wanted kids. It was the way she said it. Like she was confessing to a crime. Like she was terrified of my reaction. But again, I pushed it down. Because love conquers all, right? A few days later, we invited everyone over for a small housewarming dinner. Parents, Freddie, basically the whole dysfunctional crew. I don't know what I was expecting, but when we announced the pregnancy, I definitely wasn't expecting what happened next. My mom gasped. My dad beamed. Margaret nodded approvingly, as if I had finally done something right in her eyes. And Freddie? Freddie turned white as a damn sheet. His whole face drained of color, and for the first time in his life, he had nothing to say. No jokes, no witty remarks, just silence. Then he looked away, like he couldn't look at me, like he didn't want to look at me. I saw it. My mom saw it. And I swear for a brief second, I thought I saw something dark flicker in my mother's eyes. Something suspicious. But she didn't say a word. She just went back to smiling, to congratulating us, to playing the role of the perfect mother. After that night, Lassie changed. I mean, she had already been acting distant before, but now it was worse. She was always on her phone, always stepping outside for calls, coming home late from work, going on walks to clear her head. And every time I asked if she was okay, she gave me the same rehearsed answer, "Just pregnancy stuff, babe. You worry too much." Maybe she was right. Maybe I was overthinking everything. But if that were true, why did I keep waking up at night feeling like my whole world was about to come crashing down? It happened at 2:14 a.m. Lassie was out cold, breathing softly beside me, lost in whatever dream world she had escaped to. And then her phone vibrated. Once, twice. The screen lit up in the darkness. And there it was. Freddie. My heartbeat slowed. I stared at the screen, waiting, hoping for her to wake up and answer. But she didn't even stir. And that's when it hit me. Why the hell was my brother calling my fiancée in the middle of the night? I sat there frozen, torn between two impossible choices. Ignore it. Pretend I never saw it. Trust Lassie like a good, devoted fiancé. Pick up the phone, look at the messages, face whatever truth was waiting for me. I hesitated, my hands clenched into fists. And then, before I could stop myself, I reached for the phone, and I opened the messages. I knew deep down that opening that phone would change everything. I just didn't realize how much. At first, it was just messages, long threads of conversations stretching back for months, 6 months to be exact. My pulse pounded in my ears as I scrolled, text after text. Some of it was harmless enough at first, inside jokes, late-night chats, The kind of friendly banter you might expect from a brother-in-law to be. But then I saw it. A shift. A message from Freddie. I miss you. And then Lassie's reply. I miss you too. So much. My breathing slowed. My fingers tightened around the phone. I kept scrolling. Freddie. I hate sneaking around like this. I just want to be with you without all this guilt. Lassie. I know, baby. I feel the same way. But Evan, I can't just leave him. Not yet. Not yet. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. The messages kept coming. Mentions of late-night meetings, rushed moments together, whispered, I love yous exchanged when they thought no one else could hear. Then I saw the message that made my whole body go cold. Freddie. What if it's mine? Lassie. I don't know. I really don't. But Evan can't know. Not now. Maybe not ever. Freddie. What are we gonna do? Lassie. I don't know. We'll figure it out. We have to. My vision blurred. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. But it was. It all made sense now. The distance, the glances, the way Freddie had looked like a ghost when we announced the pregnancy. The way Margaret had practically shoved me toward marriage, like she was trying to cover something up. My entire life, my love, my engagement, my future, was a joke. A goddamn joke. I sat in the dark, staring at the glowing screen, my hands shaking. My chest felt too tight, my breath coming in short bursts. The anger built inside me like a storm, rolling in heavy and violent, waiting to explode. I wanted to wake her up. I wanted to grab her, shake her, demand answers. But I didn't. Because tomorrow was her birthday. The irony nearly made me laugh. Tomorrow, I had planned to surprise her with a beautiful dinner, a heartfelt toast, and the golden watch I had bought her, a gift meant to symbolize our future together. But there was no future anymore. I exhaled slowly, forcing the rage back down, at least for now. I went into the other room. With cold, mechanical movements, I reached for the wrapped gift on my nightstand, tore the paper off, and pulled out the expensive watch. It gleamed in the dim light. I turned it over in my hands, then placed it back in its box. Tomorrow morning, before anything else, I would return it to the store. And then, I was going to end this. I was up before the sun. I barely slept, but it didn't matter. My mind was razor sharp, locked in on one goal. End this. The first step? Getting rid of that damn watch. I got in my car and drove to the store, arriving just as they were unlocking the doors. The cashier smiled politely as I handed over the box. Not the right fit? She asked. I almost laughed. Something like that, I muttered. The refund was processed in minutes, and just like that, the last symbol of my love for Lassie was gone. Now it was time to take out the trash. I got back home to find Lassie still in bed, curled up under the blankets like she didn't have a care in the world. That changed real fast. I grabbed the nearest suitcase, yanked open the closet, and started shoving her clothes into it. Then I moved to the dresser, then the bathroom. The sound of drawers slamming finally woke her up. She groggily sat up, rubbing her eyes. Evan? Babe, what are you doing? I didn't answer. I just kept moving, my jaw clenched so tight it could have cracked my teeth. She stretched oblivious, a sleepy smile tugging at her lips. Oh my God, are you setting up some kind of surprise for my birthday? You weirdo, you know I hate waking up early. Then she saw the mess, the open suitcase, the black garbage bag stuffed with her things. Her smile vanished. Evan, what's going on? I finally stopped, turned to face her, and when I spoke, my voice came out steady, controlled. You're leaving. Her face went pale. What? I picked up her phone from the nightstand and held it up. I know everything, Lassie. I saw the messages. I know about you and Freddie. I know the baby might be his. For a second, she just stared at me, mouth slightly open, blinking like I had just spoken in another language. Then, like the true manipulator she was, she went straight into damage control mode. Evan, please! She swung her legs over the bed, standing up, hands reaching toward me. You're misunderstanding. Those texts don't mean anything. It was just stupid talk. It wasn't real. Don't lie to me. My voice came out sharper than I expected. I know exactly what it was. And now you're going to take your things and get the hell out. Her eyes widened, tears welling up. Evan, please, I'm pregnant. You can't just throw me out like this. Pregnant with my brother's kid, I shot back. She flinched. You don't know that. And I'm not waiting around to find out. I turned, grabbed the suitcase and yanked it off the bed, dragging it toward the front door. That's when I heard it. Car doors slamming outside. Then voices, laughter. And just like that, the universe decided that right now was the perfect time for the birthday surprise. Through the window I saw them, Margaret, my parents, and Freddie, all walking toward the house, big smiles on their faces, probably holding some cake and balloons. Perfect. I stepped outside, dropped Lassie's suitcase on the porch, and then went back inside for another round. Lassie ran after me, grabbing my arm. Evan, stop! Please don't do this. You already did it, I snapped, shaking her off. By the time I got the next bag out, the family had arrived. Margaret's face was frozen in horror, her knuckles white as she clutched her purse. My mom, Catherine, looked at the mess, at me, at Lassie, her lips parting but no words coming out. And Freddie stood there, jaw clenched, hands in his pockets, eyes darting everywhere except at me. No one spoke for a long second. Then, Freddie let out a forced chuckle and turned to my parents. Looks like my brother's lost his damn mind, he said. I should probably calm him down. And just like that, the final act of this nightmare began. I barely had time to register the stunned faces of my so-called family before I saw Freddie moving, charging toward me, like a guilty man caught in the act. And I was ready for him. You're a traitor! I roared, my voice ripping through the air. You slept with my wife! The words barely left my mouth before Freddie slammed into me, knocking us both onto the cold, hard ground. We rolled, fists flying, elbows jabbing, years of tension, resentment, and buried rage finally erupting. Get off me, you psycho! Freddie grunted, trying to shove me back. You ruined my life, I growled, landing a punch square into his jaw. He yelped and fought back, his fists swinging wildly, one connecting with my ribs. I barely felt it. The adrenaline was too much. Somewhere in the background, I heard Margaret screeching, her voice sharp enough to shatter glass. I knew it! I knew he was a psycho! It's in his blood! I told you all! And just like that, my real crime was clear to everyone. Not the betrayal, not the lies, not the affair. No, my crime was existing. Margaret had been waiting for this moment. Meanwhile, Lassie was crying, big, dramatic sobs, clinging to her mother like I was some monster who had terrorized her in the night. He tried to throw me out, Mom, she wailed. He lost his mind. I don't feel safe here. Safe? She didn't feel safe? I let out a bitter, humorless laugh, because what else was I supposed to do? What other reaction was even possible when the person who destroyed your life suddenly paints you as the villain? Through the chaos, I felt strong arms grab me, pulling me backward. My father. Enough, John barked, straining as he yanked me away from Freddie. Both of you, stop! Freddie, still panting, scrambled to his feet, wiping a drop of blood from his lip. He looked around, playing the hurt victim like he had rehearsed it his whole life. Everyone was staring at me now, waiting, expecting me to explain myself like I was the problem. Fine, I'd give them the truth. I shoved my hands through my hair, exhaling sharply. Lassie and Freddie are liars, I spat. They've been sneaking around for months, and now she's pregnant, and it might be his kid. Silence. Utter, thick silence. Then, laughter. Soft at first, then louder. Margaret. Oh, you're really going for insanity now, huh? She sneered, crossing her arms. That's quite a story, Evan. Did the voices in your head tell you that? I gritted my teeth. I saw the messages, Margaret. I read every single one. What messages? Freddie suddenly interjected, his voice filled with fake confusion. My blood ran hot. Don't you dare act like you don't know, I snapped, pointing at him. You were worried that the baby was yours. You were making plans behind my back. Freddie scoffed, shaking his head. Wow, just wow. And here I thought we were brothers. That hit a nerve. Brothers? I let out a hollow laugh. Brothers don't screw each other's fiancés, Margaret gasped. Enough, she bellowed, stepping protectively in front of Lassie. If you keep making these insane accusations, I'll take you to court, Evan. I'll make sure you get locked up in a damn psych ward. That was it. That was the moment I realized they weren't even going to pretend to take me seriously. They were closing ranks. Freddie, Lassie, Margaret, even my own mother, Catherine. Catherine, who had seen Freddie's reaction at the dinner, who had felt that something was wrong, but still refused to acknowledge it. I looked at them all, disgust twisting in my stomach. You've all treated me like an outsider my whole life, I said, my voice dangerously calm. And now, when I finally see the truth, you try to make me the crazy one. Margaret snorted. That's because you are crazy. And with that, she grabbed Lassie's arm and started leading her toward the car. Freddie followed, with my mother trailing behind them, throwing me one last pitying glance before turning away. Coward. They all got into Margaret's car. They left. They left me there, standing in the wreckage of what was supposed to be my life. And the only one who stayed behind? John. My father. He stood beside me, hands in his pockets, staring at the gravel driveway like he wanted to be anywhere but here. I clenched my fists, still shaking. You believe me, don't you? I asked. John sighed. Evan, those are serious accusations. Then let's make it official, I said coldly. I'm hiring a lawyer, and I want a DNA test. John exhaled through his nose, nodding slowly. Okay, that's fair. Fair. Like anything about this situation had ever been fair. True to my word, I didn't just let this slide. The day after the chaos, I walked straight into my lawyer's office, dropped every piece of evidence I had on his desk, and said 6 words. I want a DNA test ordered. And just like that, the war officially began. Margaret, of course, lost her mind. According to her, I was a dangerous, unhinged psychopath who needed immediate institutionalization. She started telling anyone who would listen that I was mentally unstable, that my orphan genes had finally caught up with me, and that I was now a threat to poor, fragile Lassie. Catherine? She wasn't as loud about it, but she did what she always did. She excused Freddie, defended Lassie, and made me the problem. We don't know if the baby is his, Evan, she said in that patronizing, motherly tone of hers. And even if mistakes were made, you shouldn't let your anger ruin this family. Ruin the family? That was rich. John, to his credit, didn't take sides. He kept his mouth shut and let things play out, which was more than I could say for the others. Meanwhile, Freddie was playing the role of the perfect knight in shining armor. The moment I filed for the DNA test, he doubled down on his public support for Lassie, showing up to her doctor's appointments, making big speeches about not abandoning a woman in need. It was all a performance, of course. He had spent months sneaking around, and now he was trying to turn himself into the hero of this story. And Lassie? She leaned into it. She moved into my parents' house, my damn parents' house, where she was protected by Catherine, Freddie, and of course Margaret. From what exactly? Me, apparently. Because in their version of events, I was the aggressive, dangerous ex-fiancé who snapped when things didn't go my way. Months passed. I stayed patient. I stayed quiet. I let them talk. But I was waiting, because I knew the moment Lassie gave birth, I'd have my chance to end this for good. And then, finally, the day came. Lassie gave birth to a baby boy. And the second that child was out in the world, I made my move. With my lawyer at my side, I returned to court and demanded a legally mandated DNA test. At this point, even the judge was curious. The whole case had turned into such a spectacle that he wanted answers just as much as I did. So, he granted my request. Only the judge suggested that Freddie take a DNA test too. The test was ordered. And the best part? Freddie agreed. He didn't hesitate, didn't panic. He actually went through with the test. And that told me one thing. Freddie fully believed he was the father. This wasn't some scared, guilty man trying to avoid consequences. He was sure of the result. And why wouldn't he be? Lassie was practically planning their wedding. Freddie was the savior of the situation. Everyone was just waiting for the results to come in so they could rub them in my face and paint me as the bitter, jealous ex who tried to ruin a happy couple. And while we waited, Margaret kept pushing for more. She wanted compensation. She wanted the courts to acknowledge that I had been abusive toward Lassie, that I had emotionally damaged her, and that she deserved some kind of financial reparations. My lawyer? He was a pro. He dragged it out, delayed hearings, filed motions, kept them tied up in paperwork while we waited for the real moment of truth, the DNA results. And when they came in, that was when everything changed. I had been waiting for this moment, the grand reveal, the dramatic finale, the moment where the truth would finally punch everyone in the face. When the DNA results came in, I made sure to keep a straight face. But inside, I was grinning like a lunatic. Because I knew that the universe had prepared something special for this circus. And boy, did it deliver. First, the expected result. I was not the father. No surprises there. But then came the real kicker. Freddie wasn't the father either. Oh, how the mighty fell. I don't even have words to properly describe the collective meltdown that followed. The absolute chaos that must have erupted in my parents' house. The stunned silence, the shouting, the disbelief, the finger-pointing. I wasn't there to witness it firsthand, but I like to imagine that the exact moment Freddie read those results, the air got sucked out of the room, and all that was left was pure, unfiltered panic. Lassie? She must have turned as white as a ghost. Margaret? Probably fainted, then woke up just to start screaming. Catherine? Devastated, furious, humiliated. John? Well, I assume he just sat there, shaking his head, wondering where it all went wrong. And Freddie? Freddie, my dear stupid brother, had just played himself. He had stepped up, ready to be the honorable man, the hero, ready to claim his rightful place as the father, only to find out he was just as much of a fool as I was. A couple of weeks later, something unbelievable happened. John, Catherine, and Freddie showed up at my apartment. I almost laughed when I saw them standing at my door, looking all kinds of uncomfortable. John was the first to speak. Evan, we were wrong. Catherine nodded, looking like she had swallowed nails. We should have believed you. Lassie. She was dishonest, manipulative, reckless. Freddie, the prize idiot, actually tried to turn it into a bonding moment. Guess I saved you from a terrible wife, huh? He even had the audacity to chuckle. I just stared at him, my expression blank. Saved me? Saved me? This man, who had spent months sneaking around with my fiancé, planning a life with my woman behind my back, was now pretending to be my savior? I didn't even bother replying. They were all so desperate to erase their own guilt, to rewrite history, to act like they were the victims. But I saw them for who they were now, and I wasn't interested in second chances. I appreciate the apology, I said evenly, but I don't need it. John sighed, nodding, accepting my decision like a man. Catherine looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. Freddie? He just stood there, shifting awkwardly, as if expecting me to hug him or something. I stepped back inside and closed the door. That was the last time I saw them. I tried to forget everything and just move on with my life. I had no contact with my family and made it clear to them that I was on my own now. Now, life is peaceful. I started an online business, something I never thought I'd do, but it turns out I have a knack for it. Business is slow, but growing. I'm learning, adapting, building something for myself. And, well, there's a girl. She lives next door, sweet, kind, down to earth. No theatrics, no games. Just a warm smile and a kindness that feels real. I asked her out the other day. She said yes, and for the first time in a long, long time, life feels good again. Oh, right. You're probably wondering, so who the hell actually fathered Lassie's kid? Well, through some mutual acquaintances, I eventually got my answer. Turns out, our dear Lassie had a little extracurricular activity with some colleague from work. Just a dumb, thoughtless fling, 1 or 2 nights tops. Apparently logic wasn't exactly her strong suit. And here's the kicker, Margaret knew. That's why she was in such a rush to secure a husband for her daughter. She wasn't pushing me toward marriage out of love or tradition. She was desperately trying to offload Lassie onto the nearest available idiot. First, that idiot was supposed to be me. Then, when that fell apart, she switched to Freddie, who, let's be honest, never met a bad decision he didn't like. So, let's break it down. Lassie was dating me, messing around with my brother, and squeezing in a few nights of fun with her coworker somewhere in between. A true multitasker. And yet, with all that scheming, all that deception, she still managed to screw herself over. Lassie was so hungry for excitement, so reckless, that she ended up completely losing control of her own game. And honestly, I'd be mad if it wasn't so damn hilarious. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to the channel. I wish you a great mood and good luck.